Hey, it's Patrick, and let's talk about Roland Sands Sectors Series parts for your Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Now, if you're not familiar with Roland Sands, he's been around for quite some time now. Former road racer, turned bike builder, turned race promoter. Guy does all kinds of stuff in motorcycling, including develop really rad parts. Now, he's traditionally had that kind of form follows function type of setup with his parts, and these are no different. Now, the one thing that really stands out to me right away are the finishes. Now, this is kind of like a top tier product, so all of these are going to kind of carry that top tier price tag as well. This is not cheap stuff. That's why you get this nickel plated finish. You get nickel or black anodized. That's the two finishes that the Sector Series stuff comes in, is nickel or black. There is no chrome. As you can see, the nickel does look similar to chrome. It has a little bit more of a muted finish, not quite so reflective, maybe a little bit of like a copper or brown tint to it. I personally really like it. It looks racy. Some of the old school flat trackers used to just nickel plate their frames. I really like that option, but if you are trying to match it to chrome, it's not gonna match exactly. You might wanna lean towards the black anodized stuff. Kind of the basis for this whole line, to me anyway, starts with the Sector risers, which is a modular setup. We have a couple of different sets here. You can see they're in two pieces here. Now, depending on how you put these together, they're gonna range anywhere from a 2-inch rise up to a 12-inch rise, and they have pullback or just straight. You see we have a black straight set here. These are 1.1/8 clamping area, so if you're gonna run bars, you gotta have an 1.1/8 clamping area. These are the pullback, but say you had a set of straight risers and you wanted to eventually change them, you could just swap the tops out, and now you have a pullback setup. In front of those, we have matching pegs, very moto-inspired peg. Like I said, CNC cutout. All this is CNC'd aluminum and then anodized, and we have that moto kind of inspiration with the little screws that are machined in there. You could swap those out if you ever wore those down, but I'm not sure how that would work because those are pretty aggressive. You'd have to do a lot of riding to wear those screws out. Coming this way, gauge setups. When you start moving these risers up in the air for that club style look on a lot of the performance baggers and Dyna, Softails, things like that, you have to be able to move your gauges, specifically on a couple of models. One, the Road Glide. You can see we have the Road Glide gauge pods here. Again, CNC'd out. You can see some of the machine marks, which I really, really like. And these move up kind of in an interesting way. They have two little clamps on the back that actually are made to clamp to the Sector risers. So as you move those up, you have a little bit of adjustment about how high you want those to be. And you can see on the mount in the Softail version, you can actually pivot the gauge forward and back to get just the perfect angle, which is a really nice option to have. A lot of times when you move your gauges with some of the options out there, they're kind of stuck at a certain angle. These give you a little more flexibility. So Road Glide, if you're gonna move those up, you need to move the gauges. Same thing with a couple of Softail models. M8 Softail models specifically, the Lowrider ST and the Slim. Now it has that gauge buried in the factory riser clamp, so you're really kind of like stuck with that unless you use something like this Roland Sands gauge relocator here. Now you can move that up into the gauge relocator and you can run whatever sector setup you want, put your bars wherever you want them, and they have you covered moving the gauge. Same setup here, it has the clamps that clamp onto the risers, and then you can tilt the gauge how you want it. Kind of rounding that out, they have engine cover setups that are the same design. We have an M8 cam cover here and a gas cap. A couple of things I like, they integrated the opposite color, so they're opposite finish. We have a nickel finish in this black cam cover, and we have a black finish in this nickel plated gas cap. So that allows you to mix and match this stuff and not have it look out of place. So if you want to add nickel parts somewhere and black parts other places, it works together really, really good. You can kind of carry that theme throughout the motorcycle. The last piece down here we have, this is the Sector fairing, which is different for most fairings. It's definitely odd in the fairing space, but it's very minimalist, but you can see you still get a fair amount of wind protection with this. You see the headlight cutout down there, so it sits on top of the headlight. How this thing mounts is, it actually mounts to the risers, which is different. Most of the time you're trying to mount your fairing to your fork tubes and find a way to jack the thing up and hold it. This is actually a pretty slick way to have a little bit of wind protection there. I've seen them paint like a number plate on here, things like that. Really kind of integrate this into the bike. It is different. It is, some people aren't gonna like this. I actually think it's pretty trick. It's a pretty slick way to add a fairing to your motorcycle. Now, if you have any questions about any of the stuff we talked about here today, go ahead and click that info tab on your desktop or mobile device. That's going to take you to the product detail page where you can read other riders' reviews and all the specs about all of these Sector products. If you still have questions, feel free to reach out to our customer service team. They would love to talk to you about what works best for you, your motorcycle, and your budget. I am Patrick. Thank you for watching. Now go work on those motorcycles.